Number one, when you're building out this two-sided platform, it's always the chicken and the egg problem. On the supply side of things, there was so much variability, seasonality when it came to like the amount of catch, what was caught, when they were coming in with the boat. It was really hard to create this consistency of experience for the consumers where people are accustomed to saying, okay, I want to order this and I expect it tomorrow. And it doesn't really work that way when you have, fishers going out and trying to reel in catch. It's especially hard when the demand isn't very big because consumers aren't ordering 50 pounds of Pacific cod. That was one of the impetuses for moving to restaurants because restaurants obviously have a lot higher demand. You can aggregate more restaurants in a single kind of geography or region to hack that demand side. And then you can go out and actually have a proper conversation with fishers and say, hey, like we have 5,000 pounds of Pacific cod demanded on a weekly basis. Are you willing to work with me?
And welcome to the Gross Profit Podcast. My name is James Kennedy. I am the CEO and co-founder at procurementexpress.com. We take the hassle out of managing your company's spend with magical features, but that's not what we are here to talk about today. Instead, I've got Joseph from Supademo. We're going to chat together about business models. We're going to nerd out about B2C, B2B, why we would want one or both or neither. So Joseph, thanks very much for coming along today. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about you and your background, and then we'll get into some model chat.
My name is Joseph. I'm based out of Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, co-founder and CEO currently at Supademo. We help anyone create beautifully interactive product demos using AI. And prior to that, I co-founded several different companies, as James alluded to. And I've been a lifelong entrepreneur. Never had a full-time job that hasn't been my own company. I've been building since maybe 15, 14. Starting with my first side hustle back in high school, and I've never looked back, and excited to be on the show today.
So let me start off there. How did you earn your first entrepreneurial dollar? I can't skip past that part.
I would say my first side hustle, official side hustle that earned me the first, I want to say $5,000, $6,000 was buying and selling retail electronics on Craigslist. Essentially, I was arbitraging by buying, phones, buying tablets, buying computers in bulk at kind of bargain discount stores. And I would be hustling the streets here in Vancouver, selling them on Craigslist and meeting people at shady parking lots and making a couple bucks off of it. So yeah, I ended up doing that for the first couple of years, and it paid for probably the first year of university when I went.
And how did your parents feel about you bringing bags of cash home late at night? Were they like, is this really electronics, Joseph? Is this legit?
I came from an immigrant family here in Vancouver, so I think my parents knew that I was a good kid and I was educated well and raised well, so they didn't have any qualms. In fact, they were pretty supportive of what I was doing. They thought it was pretty entrepreneurial.
My entrepreneurial journey, I went to Chile, where they had a program where they give entrepreneurs 50 grand to go to Chile and start a business, and the government was running it, obviously. And my grandmother was so delighted. She's telling all her friends, oh, James finally got a decent government job. This is great. After school, after college, what did you do in college? Engineering or business? What did you study?
Yeah, I studied computer science and business. So I did a double degree in Vancouver.
Out of that degree then, did you raise money, or what was your first business that you got involved with?
Really, the first business that I ventured into, it kind of spurned out of an idea, and I didn't necessarily want to pursue it full time. I'd always wanted to go down the traditional tech path of going to Google, going to Microsoft, going to a Facebook, and kind of earning my stripes before venturing off and doing my own thing. But a co-founder of that company was a friend of mine from high school, and he reached out to me about an idea to democratize access to smaller scale fishermen and essentially build a product or build a platform to help them sell direct to consumers at the time. So he had this idea. We were both in university. We both agreed to kind of pursue this during our summers, during our part-time and build this out. And honestly, one thing led to another, and it snowballed into something bigger and bigger and bigger unintentionally, until I think we were faced with a dilemma where the business was big enough. We had investors that wanted to put money into the company. And we had this really golden opportunity to like build and learn. Or I guess we made a decision to drop out of school in our last year at that time to pursue the business full time. So instead of going to exams and going to classes, we were taking a one-way flight over to Boston and walking over to the docks and trying to pitch and talk to lobster fishermen about why they should use our software. And that didn't go out too well. When you have these lanky 18-year-old, 19-year-olds pitching burly lobster fishermen, it's not going to go right most of the time.
I'd love to have seen that. As I understand it, these boats are largely, well, over here in Ireland anyway, they're largely sort of self-employed guys who own a boat or two boats or three boats, and then they go to a market traditionally. And so who was your first customer?
So it really was the fishermen. So in Canada, at least, there's a few more steps, and in the United States, in fact, as well, there's a few more steps that happen in between the fishers going to the market. So typically they end up selling their catch to what is known as a broker or a packer. And what they do is they consolidate catch from a lot of different, smaller scale fishers, and then they kind of consolidate and create consistency in quality, the availability of catch, flatten out some seasonality, for example. So they were a prime target of ours because the pattern that we had seen was they were going dock to dock to dock to dock in each small village, trying to sell bits and pieces of their catch before going to the packer or the market to sell the main load. And obviously that's a lot of extra work that they're enduring. So we asked them, why are you doing this? And essentially what they said is, hey, we're getting pennies on the dollar and like I need to make a living. So this is a way for me to supplement my income. And that was kind of what spurred this idea of, hey, why don't we help them sell more of their catch directly to consumers?
Okay, so they got a higher margin by disintermediating, as they say in YC, the packers, I guess, and go straight to the restaurants or I guess the small wholesale shops or whatever that they have in the local town.
That was the initial goal, yes.
Well, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, as Mike Tyson used to say. Who was your first customer and what were you going to do for him exactly?
So we ended up bringing on kind of a scallop farmer, actually, not even a fisherman. So he was our first real customer named Sean, and he has operations in kind of Boston and in the Nova Scotia area in Eastern Canada. And he was our first beta tester. He was incredibly helpful trying to mentor these two young entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs in creating this product. Ultimately, it didn't work out and we ended up pivoting into, creating this marketplace that connected both fishers as well as packers directly to the restaurants themselves. And the lesson I think we learned is we bit off a little bit more than we could chew. And sometimes there's a reason why an industry operates in a certain way. And for us to try to control seasonality and control all of the variable moving parts to create this consistent flow of supply for consumers that was dependable, it was very, very hard and very difficult.
What was the moment you realized, no, this is way harder than we thought it was? Did you have a restaurateur angry at you, or did you have a disappointed customer, or what happened?
Number one, I think when you're building out this two-sided platform, it's always the chicken and the egg problem. So on the supply side of things, there was so much variability, seasonality when it came to like the amount of catch, what was caught, when they were coming in with the boat. So it was really hard to create this consistency of experience for the consumers where, people are accustomed to saying, okay, I want to order this and I expect it tomorrow. And it doesn't really work that way when you have, fishers going out and trying to reel in catch. And it's especially hard when the demand isn't very big because consumers aren't ordering 50 pounds of, Pacific cod. That was one of the impetuses for moving to restaurants because restaurants obviously have a lot higher demand. You can aggregate more restaurants in a single kind of geography or region to create or hack that demand side. And then you can go out and actually have a proper conversation with fishers and say, hey, like we have 5,000 pounds of Pacific cod demanded on a weekly basis. Are you willing to work with me? And it's no longer, hey, I have 100 pounds of Pacific cod demand every week.
So the first step was, I don't know what, doing Facebook ads to try and get consumers or mom and pops literally to order fish. And then it was just, you couldn't acquire those customers cheaply enough. Were you calling them?
Yeah, we honestly didn't spend too much time on the consumer side of things and we pivoted to restaurants very quickly. And to get restaurants on board, it was honestly just knocking on doors. Restaurateurs, chefs are busy people. They don't have a lot of time. Realistically, what you have to do is go door to door to door, knock, try to get 10 minutes of their time and really be succinct and elaborate about why they should order from you.
So you signed up in the ivory towers of the computer science lab where everything's nice and clean and documented and logical. And next thing, you've got a door-to-door sales business on your hands, which is a transition. Who did the door-to-door sales? Did you try and outsource it? Did you do it yourself? What happened?
All of it was our own. So myself and my co-founder, we would divvy up leads and we would spend the bulk of our time cold calling people to try to get a hold of the chef. And if we couldn't, we would, just go down and meet people and knock on doors. And it was pretty daunting. I would say I was always loud and rambunctious and confident, but it's a whole different game when you're trying to cold call and go door to door. But it was fun.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's a very formative experience for everyone to have. It's a real where the metal hits the road. You know, I've done a bit of cold calling myself to get businesses going. Some people just love it. It's in their nature to do that. They're just like, Nate works for me. He'll do that all day long. What I would do is I would say, okay, I'm going to make 20 calls in the next 2 hours. And I would just get there until the 20 calls were done. And I would like convince myself there was something better I should be doing. And then I would do the same thing the next day and maybe I'll make it 3 or 4 hours. Were you better than that? Did you set yourself a target, like a number of doors or calls to make each week? Or did you just do it when you felt like it?
I think I was always in your camp of saying, hey, like we're going to allot 2 hours or X number of calls and we're just going to go ahead and do it. It's not something that I always enjoyed doing, but I've always kind of grown up within the business realm with a mindset that you need to do whatever is necessary to move the needle forward for the business. And if that's the highest ROI or most impactful thing you can do because you have zero sales, that's what you got to do. Not build a product, not do marketing, not do branding. It's you need customers. So you need to call people right now or figure out another way to acquire them.
And there's a certain pleasure in knowing you're doing the hard thing. Let's face it, most of your competition would not do. The gnarlier the task, I always think, great, at least, 3 of my 10 competitors are going to fall at this hurdle if I just keep going, and then you just keep going. Okay, so sounds like it's going well. You've got over this fear, natural sales sort of fear, I guess. You're getting customers in. I guess you get to the stage where you know how many calls you have to make to land a sale, but you're not working there anymore. So what happened next? Why did you decide that this wasn't a business for you?
There's a lot of steps that happened in between then. We went through a global pandemic and obviously our business was heavily impacted. So, that business ended up evolving into kind of this Uber for seafood online marketplace connecting fishers, packers, seafood companies to restaurants, where we managed all the logistics of getting seafood from point A to B to C using our technology. We ended up raising some capital, scaling out the team, and we were able to get to mid 7 figures in revenue annually. But as I mentioned, the restaurants and supply chains were probably the 2 most impacted during the pandemic. And we were at a point where we had to make a decision very quickly on what we wanted to do or what decision we would have to take to survive, because we didn't know how long the pandemic would last for. We didn't really know what the future would look like. So luckily at that point, a lot of our competitors, the distributors and wholesalers that sold to restaurants, were in the same boat. And they essentially were coming up to us and saying, hey, like, I know you guys know technology, you know our space. We're trying to pivot and trying to like sell to consumers and sell to markets and do all these things that we've never done before. Can you help us? And that was kind of that light bulb moment where we ended up kind of spinning up our technology and turning it into an e-commerce platform and operations platform that any wholesaler, any distributor could use to sell direct to consumers and eventually to restaurants. So that company is around today and my co-founder runs it. But ultimately, I think I always try to optimize for learning and growth personally, and felt like my learning had tapped out in that specific industry and business model. And I was really eager to go out and explore and do something new. I think for the first time ever, I kind of took the decision that was best for me and not necessarily best for the company, and ended up moving forward with a new position.
Let's face it, most businesses don't get as far as you did with that. So congratulations. And then you woke up one morning and the world is your oyster. What did you learn from the last business that led you to select Supademo as your current venture?
There are a lot of lessons that I've learned. I made a lot of mistakes, burned a lot of capital, hired the wrong people. But I think number one, I think if I had to highlight just a few lessons, I think people is the number one important thing. Make sure you have the right co-founders. Make sure you hire really, really slowly and you're pragmatic and considerate about who you bring onto the team. And if they don't work out, you got to let them go quickly. And that's the best decision both for yourself and for them. I think they're, as a first time, I guess, like real entrepreneur with that tech startup, I made a lot of mistakes of keeping people on the team for too long, and that somewhat eroded some of the culture and goodwill that I had with other members of the team as well, and performance suffered as a result. So I think people is really important, and being really cognizant about the market, the business model, and the potential distribution that you have in plan for your product. You can have an amazing product, but as a second time founder, I think the reason why they stress on distribution is that is your defensibility and that is your growth lever.
It doesn't take many bad hires to ruin the culture in a business. In fact, maybe only 1 in 10 or something is enough to do it, right? So is it fair to say that, that's something you took from the first business when you're setting up now? Like, actually sounds to me like who you're working with in this business, you've realized this is the most important thing. And maybe a few mistakes were made in the last business where you lost control of the culture or the culture you wanted to work in.
Some elements of that, I would say, yes. I definitely learned a ton of lessons. We probably hired over the period of 6 years running the business 40 people, 30 people, if not more. So, yeah, I think I have a much better idea of who is a good fit, all these cultural and personal nuances to watch out for, because I think I had overemphasized kind of the prestige and the experience a little bit more at that time compared to now.
What do you look for now when you're building this team? How do you know? Because it's difficult. Like some people interview very well. You're right about the titles and the experience and the je ne sais quoi and the, good wordplay or whatever. But then when it comes down to Monday morning, 9 o'clock, you don't always know what you're going to get. I mean, it's a very personal thing. You say the business, but really it's your business. You're building it. It's the place you want to work. So what's your selection criteria now? How do you make sure that you're getting the right people into Supademo?
What I try to optimize for as a very, very small informative team at this point is how do we get operators on the team? So someone that is not a specialist, but someone that is a generalist and likes to be in that type of role where they get to wear many, many different hats and they're comfortable with a high degree of ambiguity. So for engineering, for example, you're not going to have pixel perfect mock-ups, nor like a designer for that matter. You're not going to have scoped out product requirements documents that tell you exactly what you do. You're going to have a deep understanding of our business, our model, the opportunity space, as well as having empathy for our customers and the problems that they're looking to solve, and be able to package all of that information up and distill that into like output. And a big part of that, I think, is someone that is enthusiastic, energetic, and willing to go out on a limb and do things and fail really quickly, but also take the lessons back and learn from it and reorient and grow as an individual. Every person that we bring on at this point is like a founder and an owner in their own right. So that's kind of who we're trying to optimize for in every role.
Do you think it's going to continue like that? Or do you think that's right up to, say, the first 5 or 10 hires and then it changes? Because you've seen it all the way up to 40, right? Fair sized number of people. Is that going to be like 40 people all like that? Or do you think it's going to change over time?
It definitely needs to change. And the caveat there, it wasn't 40 at one time. It was probably like cycling through, but it definitely needs to change. At some point, you need to introduce process, unfortunately, or some level of bureaucracy for the company to function and your customers and, or I guess, your employees to find success in their roles. I don't know what that magic number is. I've heard of larger scale companies, for example, Shopify, where there's very little process and a lot of like async projects and priorities happening on the fly. So I don't understand how they function as a billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company. Yeah, it definitely needs to change over time and transform.
Tell us, what's the idea behind Supademo before I get too deep on it, to describe how it can be used for process documentation.
We help anyone create beautifully interactive product demos and product guides and workflow, step-by-step workflow documents using AI. So you turn on our extension and you walk through any workflow that you want to demonstrate, whether it be how to reset a password, how to change billing, or just a high level overview of your product or service. And we will capture clicks and videos only as you take action. So you can go as slow or as fast as you would like. And we turn it into a step-by-step, asynchronous, self-paced walkthrough that you can share as a link or embed anywhere on the web. So it's probably 95% faster than video. You don't need to have a script. You don't need to record or re-record multiple times. And you can apply things like voiceover if you hate the sound of your own voice like me, and go out and edit it afterwards. So in terms of maintainability, as processes or pages or documents change, it's much easier to maintain because you can go in and remove slides, add slides, change the text, versus obviously video. You have to do the whole thing all over again.
Because a lot of people have that problem where, yeah, I can see the idea of recording something, but then having to talk about it is awkward. And actually, what's worse for me is a video with no explanation. I hate it when I go on YouTube, I'm looking, how to whatever, reset my fryer or program the microwave or whatever. And it's just like this music and like someone showing stuff. And I'm like, no, tell me what it is. It's super annoying. And this is like a sweet spot between the two. But really, I tried it and it's really quite cool. You press a button, record what you're doing, boom, and the computer actually writes the script for you. It'll say, hey, first click here, then go over here, and it'll create little pop-ups and everything. It looks super professional, and it's really fast to use. And then I was still able to go in and tweak it afterwards to change some words if I wanted. And like you say, it was much quicker and less embarrassing than having to record my own voice describing how to do it. It's so quick to use. I can see it for us, even as a support side. Someone's got a support query, we can go into their account, show them how to do something particularly in their account, then send them the video, or generalized onboarding as well when people are new in our product. Or let's say you've got someone, who's coming into your firm for the first time, you want to show them how you use QuickBooks to code your invoices or whatever. It can all be done in a really nice, intuitive way. It's a very impressive product, I have to say. Let's wrap it up a little bit. Before I let you go, I have to ask, I love this question. Who would you say is your business hero?
It's hard to pinpoint one person because I think there are leaders like Phil Knight that are like way up there in the stratosphere, with the Elon Musks and the Zuckerbergs of the world, Bill Gates of the world. And then there are people that I really admire that can instill and pass off more tactical knowledge of what you can actually implement on a day-to-day basis. For example, I read Kyle, and he runs a newsletter called Growth Unhinged, talking about product-led growth and tactical things you can do on a day-to-day basis. Or Lenny Rachitsky is someone I look forward to reading. But I would say Phil Knight is probably the one person that I really admire, in the sense that in the era of grandiose TechCrunch announcements and funding announcements and building this like facade of, sexy startups and founders, I think he does a really good job of celebrating the people that work behind the curtains without any recognition publicly, who probably contribute the majority of the value to an organization and prop it up and are the foundation for all of its successes. And I love how he pinpointed and highlighted all of the influential and impactful people at Nike that I never would have known about had he not mentioned and essentially shared their story and how much they meant to the company in his book Shoe Dog. So I really appreciate that about Phil Knight.
Joe, you're a star. Thank you very much for coming along here today. If anyone would like to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. It's /in/JHY Lee. Or you can look up Joseph Lee Supademo. And if you want to learn more about Supademo, it's just SUPADEMO.com.
Great. Thanks for coming along, Joe. If you enjoyed this style of interview with an entrepreneur, I'm always super pumped to talk to entrepreneurs like this. So drop me a comment or send me an email, james.kennedy@procurementexpress.com, and I'll get more on the show for you. So until the next one, I'll see you.